We went shopping today for the October birthdays, but all we came home with was donuts and Starbucks mocha. So sometimes you win and sometimes you really win. But anyway, I wanted to just kind of do a little quick intro about this video. Following, I'm still waiting for the fabric that I'm going to use to make a top for this dress. The final in the jumper challenge. I have the skirt and then this bodice that just does not work for me, which was the bodice on the dress. We've already talked about it. That's all that needs to be said. So I will be removing this, but I'm not going to do that on camera because that would be so tedious. But you can see right here, this is the seam that needs to be unpicked. And that's just a boring task that I'll do by myself. I've got some of it done, but I don't want to tear the skirt part. So I'm going to be pretty careful and just kind of pick it apart. You know, how you do. You find your rhythm and you just do it. Sometimes it's real easy. Sometimes it can be a little bit more difficult depending on your fabric. But that's for me to do. The fabric I bought is a broadcloth that really kind of matches the turquoise that you see in the right here in this area right there, and it should be here. I think the delivery date, the expected delivery, is October 3rd, and then they're going to give themselves some wiggle room, so it'll be like the 3rd through the 12th or something. It's Amazon. I've already cut out that view that I'm going to use. We've already talked about that, so that's all that needs to be said. When I get that pattern and I get that shirt cut out, of course there'll be modifications. We know about this because of this angled skirt. That will be my next video with the jumper challenge. But until the fabric arrives, I've got to pick out what I'm going to do for buttons. I'm thinking covered buttons, and I'll probably use this fabric. But until all of that happens, my basic content will be the how-tos and the sewing surprises. Today was Wednesday. It is a rainy, yucky day in the Pacific Northwest on September the 29th of 2021. It's just been one of those days. I've wanted to get in the sewing room and straighten things up and clean and just do some things that need to be done. But the weather has kind of just knocked the wind out of my sails, so to speak. And I've not gotten in the sewing room until just now. It is, I think, like 4:30. Yeah, 4:30 in the afternoon. That's okay. I'm going to go ahead and kind of prepare to get this fabric or get this pattern cut out. And the reason I'm going to do that is the fabric I ordered, I'll pop a picture up right there. I'm going to go ahead and just get this cut and prepped and ready to go. Make sure that I, don't see any like glaring issues that I'll have to deal with. But when I cut out a pattern, I don't like to have something else going on in the same day. So I'm going to look at my pattern pieces and see what all I have. So to refresh your memory, I will be making view D. I think that view A, B, C, and D all use the same front and possibly the same back. I don't think there's any difference in the front and the back. No, there isn't. So these right here, this is the back and this is the bottom part of the front. And I'm just going to go ahead and get those cut out, and then we'll look at the rest of the little pieces that go with that as well. Every time I cut out a pattern, it's paper. I prefer to use scissors that I'm only cutting paper with. These are an older pair of Ginger scissors that I've had, for, I don't know, a long time. Ooh, I don't know if I'm going to get this to focus. So generally speaking, if I have a package to open or something weird like a bit of fusible interfacing or a pattern, any of those kinds of things, I just use these scissors that I no longer use on my fabric. Okay. Hey guys, so next day, this arrived. I didn't know what it was, so I went ahead and opened the package. I think you saw me open this. This is the Pellon that I ordered from Amazon. It's 15 inches by 3 yards, and it works really, really well for narrow pieces that you might like. For example, it says right here, blouses and dresses, collars, cuffs, and plackets, men's dress shirts, quilting and crafting projects. There's 15 inches right there. That's like tiny to me. So it's this wide by 3 times 36. So you have quite a bit of length and a 15-inch fixed width, which would work really well for a bag or something like that. And speaking of a bag, since my fabric for the shirt has not arrived, And I went shopping at Trader Joe's today, who kindly reminded me at the checkout, both my husband and I, that tomorrow, October 1st of 2021, plastic, that's easy for me to say, plastic bag ban takes effect in our area. I don't know if it's through all 50 states or if it is just certain states, but it is for real happening in Washington State. This would be a pretty tote bag. It really, really would be a very nice tote bag. So let's make a tote bag out of this. And that's kind of what I'm talking about. It's if I've got that much fabric floating around that I lost this, that's too much. Okay, so I'm gonna, let's see, obviously anything 45 inches wide would be way too big for a tote bag. So if I cut these in half and then stitched them, that's the first thing I'm gonna do, is just cut each one in half. Okay, so you probably know the drill with a jelly roll strip. They're 2.5 inches. This one's 2.5. I do not pre-wash these. They don't do well. I do typically spray starch these, but I haven't done that to this batch. I can tell because they have a very soft feel. But what I do is I basically just leave them alone. This particular roll was cut with a wavy or pinked edge, and I think these go through a machine. I'm not sure. I do know there are some smaller businesses that hand cut their pre-cuts, and this would have been done, I think, with a straight rotary blade. But oftentimes when you get a jelly roll, you'll have this pinked kind of wavy edge. These that I did earlier have been pressed, and this one has been pressed, and those I'm not going to worry about until I need to. So this one and this one, and this one and that one. And I believe the way I will do this is I'm going to stitch these together. Have four of these attached to the wider piece. So now I'm going to take the wider piece from the other set that I stitched, and right sides together I'm going to, I have to decide what's the bottom. Oh, I kind of like the stripes, so I'm going to have to do it like this, even though these are the exact same piece of fabric. Oh, well, you know what? Flip it over. That was the one rule that I wanted, was that they weren't button up right next to each other. So that's okay. All right, so now I'm going to stitch these together. All right. So next, I'm just going to trim off all these threads, and we're going to square up the sides, because I have created this, and the bottom of this is those extras that I just attached right there and over here. But I want this to be neatly squared up, so I'm going to have to press this, and I need to trim off the threads. Alright, now the next plan of action is to straighten up these raggedy edges, which that's inevitable when you work with a pre-cut set like I did, the way I did it. What I'm going to do is fold this like so, and I want to see what this looks like down here. It's a little twisted, so I'm going to do it like this. I want the bottom to be straight because I can't cut it to be straight, but I can cut the top to be somewhat straight. The two sides also need to be straight. So I'm going to fold it in half like so. I'm going to remind myself that this is freestyle sewing. I'm going to use my Omni Grid just for measuring a way to cut this to create a straight edge. I don't need the 3 inches, so I could use anything that was comfortable for me to cut with. All right, I need to check. All right, this side is the most ragged right here, so I'm going to cut it this way. Okay, I'm going to cut along this straight line on my plastic cutting mat. I have this sort of ishy straight on there. Okay. And because the blade on my rotary cutter is dull, I usually just count for the one time for every layer of fabric, and I usually only cut 4. I don't think I've ever cut more than 4 layers at once. So here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I just gently pull this away, and I'm good to go. All right, that will go in my cabbage. All right, let's see what it looks like. Yeah, it's truly not going to be that big of a deal. All right, so I have to do some more trimming. All right, whatever. All right, so what I was trying to say is this one is this wide, which is 2. But when I flip it over, because I had to trim it down, this one is 1 inch. So this is 1 inch. This piece of fabric is 2 inches, and that is not even going to bother me. Okay, so the next step is to, if you want to line it, now is when you would do that. At this stage of the game, you would make the exact same thing and you would line this. So I'm not going to. I want my grocery totes to not be fabric wasters. So I'm flipping it to right sides together. Right. Make sure that the top edge is lining up, and you might even have to pin it. Okay, there we go. And I'm going to do a cut boxed bottom. I didn't do that in the last 2 totes that I made. Both ways are fine. They literally are absolutely fine. But I wanted to show you how to do a cut boxed bottom in case you've not done that before. So you can use a ruler and measure. If I measure a 3-inch cut boxed bottom, I will end up with a 6-inch wide bottom section of my bag. 6 inches seems to be about the right size for the items that I tend to purchase. So I can either use my 3-inch wide ruler. I can set the 3-inch mark right here along the bottom. So there's the 3. So I know up to here is 3. And then I just mark it with a marker. And it doesn't matter if it's a washable marker or not, because the inside of the bag isn't going to show, and your sewing will probably disguise it anyway. I don't think my groceries will be offended, so I'm going to just use a regular pen and do this. Now you can mark both if you want to, or once you get this section cut, you can just use this as a template. But I'm just going to go ahead, 3 inches. So I've got it lined up against the edge over here. 3 inches is right there. And I'm going to hold it nice and steady and mark it. Okay, now before I do anything else, I'm not going to touch this until I take a pin and pop it in here, and a pin and pop it in here outside of my sewing lines, which are these right here. But I don't want this to move. The other thing I'm going to do is take a pin and pin right above the square that I made on both sides, and then right beside it on the bottom down here. And the whole point of that is, I had a phone call and I totally forgot what I was saying. But anyway, the reason you're doing this is you want to stabilize where you're going to be cutting. So make sure that you can cut where you've marked without, hitting a pin. And you're going to just cut out these squares like so from both layers, so that you've got a gap right there. And hang on to this, because it could be, you could turn it into something. Same thing with this side over here. We're just going to cut it right on those lines. And yes, it does, I believe in this case, if you make it this way, these have to be cut out. I don't know how else it would work if you did not. Now, I didn't get a good strong cut right here, so I'm going to come back in and shave off this fabric that I missed. Okay. Now, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to stitch this side seam right here down to this bottom. And I'm not taking that pin out because I don't want it to slip and slide around. I'm stitching as far away from my visible pieces of selvage as I can. It's a pretty big seam allowance. And I'm going to lock those stitches. I'm still looking to make sure that I have bobbin thread. Yep. Okay. All right, now when we get to here, we're going to stop, but we're going to reinforce by backing up. Just like that. Okay. Now, this is a folded edge, so I want that to be nice and, you know, crisp. I'm going to use my thumbnail, kind of make it a nice crisp edge. And I'm not going to stitch it. I don't have to. We're going to ignore this and come up here and stitch the next side seam. And we're going to also lock those stitches. Okay. And now we get to make this fun little boxed bottom. So I can take the pins out now. I don't need them because the side seams have been stitched. And that's really all I need to worry about. I'm going to cut some threads here and here. Alrighty. So the next thing we're going to do, if you've never done this before, my recommendation is you look at it like this. You might have a bottom seam. If you had two pieces of fabric that you were going to put together, you would also stitch all the way across this bottom. But mine is folded, so I don't have to have a stitch there. Alright, so then you've got your little, I just call it a square, okay? And we're holding it here. We're going to turn it like this and then pull the open point. So the bottom point right there that's like looking right at us, we're going to just take the two pieces of fabric and pull it out like that. Pull those away from each other. Now I have this crisp fold that I can see. That's where I want this seam from my side seam to match up. So I'm going to take that crispy fold and I'm going to put it right on the side seam and I'm going to pin that where that matches up. And then I'll have this to sew together like that. And then whatever seam allowance you want to use, go ahead and stitch all the way across. Pull that pin out. Make sure everything is flat. There we go. It definitely pays to take your time. Okay. All right, so there's one. And we're going to do the same thing on the other side, of course. So let's see, it was like so. Make sure I've got my crispy bottom fold right there. Okay, and now I'm going to just pull that little opening apart. I'm going to take the fold and my side seam, or the bottom seam and the two sides, and stitch right across there. And we need to make sure that everything is flat, looking good. This. Alrighty. And when you open out your bag, turn it right side out. here is your boxed bottom edge. Now it needs to be okay. I'm back. It's a whole new day. It was kind of late when I was recording last night, and we ended up going out for fish and chips at Ivar's down in McCall. Anyway, this is the boxed bottom, and remember we cut a 3-inch 3x3 piece of fabric here, and when we open this up, I haven't pressed this yet, but we should have close to 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and a little extra right there on that side. And on this side, we have basically the same thing. I got to press this, but get that poked out. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and a little extra. So I'll get these poked out and pressed, and then I need to make some handles and decide how I'm going to finish off the top portion, which I could either do with a hem, just hem this down, however I choose to do that, or I could take strips, which I might end up doing. I might cut this, add them together, and then do a folded like so. Alright, next move would be to fold this in half and press. And I am going to use my iron. And then I will bring this to the center and then this to the center so that I have finished edges, and I'll just fold this right over the top of the bag for a finished top edge. Two rows of stitching along that top edge. Makes it nice and strong and gives this a little bit more stability in both directions. So all that is left to do is the handles. I'm gonna do a kind of a radical design on the handles. Alright, so what I have is fabric I purchased that was already serged all the way around when I purchased it. I didn't ask for it to be serged, it just arrived that way. So my plan, I'm going to see how this will work. I'm going to fold this in half and stitch it together using a blanket stitch right along the raw edge. Okay, so there's that edge, and I'm going to use this as a strap. I mean, it's sturdy. I suppose I could actually stitch. What if we took a I have a sort of a wave stitch. I'm going to stitch that on the other side. It doesn't need it to hold it together, but it might need it for stability. Okay, well, as fun as this stitch is, I think it uses too much thread. So I'm going to do a different stitch on the other handle. But I can definitely feel there's a little bit more stability. I like that idea. Alright, that was definitely a better option. And I love the way that looks. That would be so pretty on the hem of a dress or even on a shoulder strap, or you could make a belt. It's kind of cool, and it does definitely add strength to this handle. Okay, so we have our two handles made for the freestyle tote. And let me get all these threads. I've just been throwing them at my thread catcher, not in it, because I can't get to it. Oh, okay. Alright, so I'm going to fold my tote in half right along the side seam. They should be easy enough to just fold in half. And then I don't want the handles to be twisted, so depending on which one I want, which of these two sides I want on the outside and which I want on the inside, I will fold this in half, like so, and hold it up right there, and then just bring this out. So if this design is on the inside, it needs to be on the inside over here, and that means that my handles won't be twisted. And then I'll need to pin this, and I like where it is on this side. I think I'll do a cross stitch with my pins, so they'll be straight. I keep hearing weird things. I can't tell if that's, must be a fairy. Okay. Now I need to measure this to here. And I usually about, yeah, I'm almost always just right at 3 inches. Visually, that works for me. And I can see it's just slightly raised from this little blue calico. So I want this to be 3 inches as well. I will measure it before I pin it down. Yep. Okay. And again, we'll just do cross stitch pins. You can also clip it if you prefer. All right. Okay. Now I always start on the left side and stitch down, across, up, and across. I find I don't have to lift my sewing needle or cut threads and start over. I don't know why, but that's what works for me. So I'll go ahead and get this one on. I'm going to do the same thing on this one. So I'm going to fold it in half, kind of hold it up like this, and then, oops, flip it over, and then just pull these away from each other, and that way you know the handle is not twisted. It's the best way I have found. And now all I have to do is just line these up, and you can feel where the bottom of the other handle is, which is right there. You do want them to be the same length. And then pin this one on. Okay, freestyle tote is finished and ready to be used right here. The great thing about it is the fabric is out of my stash. It's being used for something useful. I love it. It's got nice handles and a nice big boxed bottom, 6 inches across the bottom down there. Plus, it's not bulky, so I can just fold it up and carry it with me to the store. Okay, so there's one thing I wanted to show you guys, and then I think next time I'm going to show you how to install a zipper in case you're nervous. All right, if you happen to have Gutermann thread spools in your possession, which we all probably do, at least one, there is a trick. There's a little something special that you get with a Gutermann thread spool. And that is on the bottom, down here, not on the top, but down here on the bottom. If you twist this and pull, you have a storage area for sewing needles. So some prefer to not have thread on their needles while they're storing these, but I do prefer, because it's a lot easier to remove them. But the best, easiest way is to just lay the needle in there on its side like that, and then this piece has little grooves like so. It also has a hole in the bottom. So if your needle is in the middle, it is literally going to just fall right out of this little hole. But if you put this on top of your sewing needle, like that, then you have your needle, and if you need to go to sewing class, you're all set and ready to go. Okay guys, I hope you liked this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't already subscribed, please consider doing so. I would love to have you join us, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.